if we were able to do that, we probably wouldn't stay in situations and keep ourselves there for as long. But this might be a good point to bring up
Yes.
in the conversation. Okay, sis, are we ready?
We're ready.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Not Us podcast, hosted by two sisters, myself, Angela, and my beautiful sister, Sam, where we talk about change and choice, and we celebrate all those messy bits in between.
We're not doctors, gurus, therapists, or witches. The opinions and stories expressed in this episode are our own for entertainment only and subjected to change. Swearing is likely, and please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. When will I get that right? Oh, sis.
Old dog, new tricks.
I've always thought that I was quite a smart girl and had a great memory, but I seem to struggle with remembering our intro. But anyway,
Sorry.
I just don't like being told what to do.
Listen, you told yourself what to do. Close that intro for yourself.
I don't like being told what to do by myself or by anyone else. I rebel against my own self.
I rebel to want to let you tell yourself what to do.
It's all about what I feel like in the moment.
That's it. You can repeat it and say it however you wish. This is a free, safe space.
Sis. We had a quick conversation yesterday about outgrowing our lives. And on this podcast, we talk about change and choice and the messy in-betweens. And we've spoken about the growth journeys that we've been on, the changes that we've undertaken. But I've had a couple of conversations over the past couple of months just about what happens when you outgrow parts of your life, whether it's relationships, routines, your introduction, whatever it might look like. What has your experience been like when you've outgrown different parts?
Well, you like to tell me often how I basically give you whiplash with all the changes I make. As I move from one experience to another and try new things and take on new names and do all of that. So I feel like I've outgrown lots of things in my life. Some have been a nice, natural, easy outgrow. Others have been painful, and some of those I still carry with me. And those are usually for me related to my heart, because it's one thing to outgrow situations. Like when kids try new things, like they try the piano and then they're trying this and their parents are like, can you just pick one thing? I feel like that's what I've done a lot of my life, is just try new experiences. But when it comes to people and the heart, and suddenly your choices impact another human, that's when it's a whole lot more complicated. So to answer your question, yes, lots of change, some of it with resistance and some of it with ease. How about you?
I'd say it's a combination. Once I have made a decision and I set in, I'm quite black and white about it. I can remove myself emotionally from the situation quite efficiently. It just takes me a while to get there. And I'm the type of person that likes to close out a chapter. If it is with someone else, I prefer to have a conversation in terms of saying goodbye. And it doesn't have to be goodbye forever. It's just goodbye for right now. And I was watching something on Instagram the other day where this woman was speaking about it's okay to say goodbye to relationships, because as we grow and we evolve and we change, whether that's circumstantial or by choice, sometimes we outgrow friendships and relationships. And it's in that outgrowing that those relationships become toxic because they're not working for both of you or for either one of you. And that can often be hard. And I think sometimes it's harder when it's with friends, because you may have had a great friendship and it might have been surrounded with the most amazing memories. But as you've journeyed on, it's now got to a point where it feels a little bit draining. And what she was saying was that you have to look after you And it's okay to then say sometimes to those friends or to those people, this is not goodbye forever. It's just goodbye until we can meet halfway on the bridge again.
Mm.
And you often speak about that bridge analogy. I really thought that was so beautiful, actually. And it's almost like giving us permission to go, part of growth means that you will outgrow places and people and even routines. What you once found great joy and love in might not bring the same spark any longer as you journey through this life. And so I if I look back, there have been times where I have needed drama to give myself permission to move on. And then there have been times where I have been a lot more compassionate
Mm.
and have given people the opportunity to either catch up with me or to make a decision as to whether or not they want to continue journeying with me. And that
Mm.
hasn't always meant that the choice has been yes, but that was at least the choice that I presented or the offer that I presented. And then honoring myself in moving forward, regardless of whether they are able to journey with or not. And it does not mean that that wasn't painful. Of course, it's painful. It's actually, I think it's harder when it's done with compassion and kindness as opposed to the drama, because the drama can give you anger and whatever kind of emotion that will fuel you on.
Yeah, anger is a great catalyst to move you forward. What comes up when you say that is the phrase reason, season, or lifetime. We've spoken about it quite a lot. But if we could look at our lives and go with the people around us, what is the reason that they're in my life? Is this just a season, or is this someone that comes with me for a lifetime? And a lifetime doesn't have to be, you've got to be married to them for the rest of your life. But if you've had really significant experiences with someone, you carry those with you for the rest of your life. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be your forever partner. But I think it's one of the things that our whole podcast is based on, is that we are continually changing and evolving if we choose. We can resist it naturally, like every other living organism on the planet. We evolve and change and grow and adapt. And it's when we resist change because we are afraid, or we don't want to hurt anyone else, we want to stay with what we know. That's the point where the tension arrives in our lives and the stress arrives, because life is like naturally moving us forward,
Yeah.
and growing us. But I know we're speaking kind of not metaphorically, but we're putting a concept out there. But
In broad strokes.
yeah. Maybe if we hone in on something specific, my question to you is, can you give us an example of a time in your life where you have outgrown a person or a situation, and a little bit about the tension that brought to you?
One of my biggest areas of growth, and one of the things that I have spent probably the last 3 or 4 years working on, is honoring myself enough to leave situations when I know that they've ended. And what I've done in the past, and I still struggle with it, is staying in situations because I don't want to say goodbye, or I can make it better, or we can make this work. And whether that is career, whether it's relationships, whether it's friendships, whatever it might look like. So I resist. And listen, saying goodbye for me is super hard. Even saying goodbye to someone who's going away, I find it very traumatic.
And you're a big airport crier.
Absolutely not. I make sure that I've got makeup on, because there's no way that I'm walking around with my makeup streaming down my face. I remember when my brother moved to the UK and he'd gone a couple of months before us, I made sure that I had mascara on so that there was no way that I was going to cry. So I'm not a crier, but my heart breaks internally. I'm not very expressive with the emotions. I keep it all inside so that I can really feel it.
So it can really make you sick.
I can really feel it deep, 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 deep. And then I'll wait for a movie, an animal movie like Marley and Me. And then, you know,
Yeah.
my throat contracts and I feel physically ill as the tears stream down my face.
Yeah.
But so I struggle to walk away. And when I started seeing a life coach in 2022, that was the thing that I wanted to work on. How do I give myself permission to leave when I know that relations or situations are no longer working for me? And that's been career. Like when you are in a work environment where you know that you can do the job, you do the job really well, but culturally there is a misalignment or your value is not being honored. And so you're being asked to be something that you are not. And I've absolutely been in that situation where I should have actually just gone, thanks very much. This is not for me. You are asking me to be someone that I am not.
Yeah.
And I'm not willing to compromise myself. And so instead of walking away in those situations, I adjusted and I shape shifted and tried harder to be what they needed, where I actually should have just gone, thanks very much. This is not working. We can both agree that it's not working and let's walk away from that. And so that's definitely something that I have tried to work more on. And for me, it's about I stay and I think about like, let's make it comfortable for someone else because I'm okay with being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
That's not how I want to live my life. It's also actually not living your life. It's resisting the change that is available. And so then I kind of think to myself, well, what's the point of doing the work and working on myself or wanting, to co-create and stuff? And then you're still not taking the steps to move where you need to move. Does that answer the question? Or am I
Yeah.
still in broad strokes?
Broad strokes are good. We've got some time to get into the detail. I think it's when change is coming, you might often feel stress or something prickling in your skin. There's various signs. It's almost like time for change whispers. These signs are almost whispers before they start shouting. And if we could get in there and listen very carefully to the whispers, become accustomed to what those whispers are in our bodies and where they sit in our bodies, because our bodies never lie. Our minds can lie to us and trick us, but our bodies will tell us the truth. And if we can catch those whispers and move with them as we go along, often the change doesn't need to be as dramatic. It's this small 1 degree shifts and changes that can have such massive impact as opposed to now having to choose the high drama. And you and I've both we've done the soft and we've done the high drama as well. So that's our choice. It's our choice as humans to choose how we want to approach change.
Well, I don't know if it is our choices. I think more than anything, it's our wound response to life.
Yeah.
So if we understand, and especially today where we have so many more options available to us, it's not a case of like 40 years ago where you had to get married because it was impossible. First of all, women got paid much less than men, but it was impossible to have a home and a career. And so you grew up with the understanding that you would get married and you would have children and you would be a good wife and mother and then grandmother. Now we have very different options.
Yeah.
So you can choose to be a mother and a wife and a grandmother, or you can choose to be a career person, or you could be choosing to have both, whatever that might look like. And so we've got a lot more option. But the way we've been brought up to be good girls, and good girls don't hurt other people, they're kind, they're nice, they are self sacrificing, that is not necessarily choice, that's conditioning. And I know for me, I would rather be rejected than to reject another person.
Mm.
In one sense. In another sense, I'm like quite petrified of being rejected, right? So, I mean, that's why I would know that I'm not on the dating apps because I'm not gonna ping anyone, which is probably like the safest place to do it because, they don't have to respond. But I wonder if the more aware you are of how you operate, you can then question yourself in terms of, Is that how you want to proceed? Just stopping and pausing in terms of going, okay, this is how I normally do it. Do I need the high drama? Or what is right for me in this situation?
Mm. Yeah.
I
I
think
think
that's where choice comes in.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We default to our wound
Yeah,
or to our base,
knowing.
whatever that is, and then but it's how we choose from there. And I mean, you and I are both in an interesting situation. Like my baseline is abandonment. That's pretty common for adopted children. And so I'm always going to launch from that place of, well, am I going to be the abandoner or am I going to be the one who's abandoned? And any goodbye feels much bigger than it does to people who don't have that as a baseline. But it's then the choice is, do I want that to define how I respond to everything? The choice is in, again, not what life gives to us, but how we respond to what life gives to
Yeah.
us. So, yes, the guilt aspect, though, it links directly into what you're saying, because as girls, we were brought up to follow a certain structure, the fairy tale, and be a good girl and all of those. Anytime you make a choice for yourself or one that could hurt your partner or do anything like that, there's fear. But I think guilt is the one that keeps a lot of people stuck, because you question yourself, you just end up, it's this awful paradox, because especially if you in relationship are choosing, you might still love the person, you might still care for them, but you know that you've outgrown this and you desire more. Like no matter what you do, you can't stay in the situation. Life is pushing you elsewhere. And so then it can really just be based on those primal reactions, or as we call them, distractor implants in access, these things that just distract you from getting on with your life. I read a book a couple of years ago. Well, I mean, it's so well known now. You'll know it. We've watched the movie. Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert.
I hated the book. I didn't like the movie either. But not the concept of it. I just the writing of it was very difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read this book.
You loved the book. You
I
loved the
and I
movie.
watched the movie, and actually a few years later, when I was on one of my world tours of Cats the musical, one of the girls in the cast, her now husband, plays the son of one of the characters, the lovely son. So I was like, oh, I know you. I was doing that groupie thing, but I digress. I read this book and I identified with it in so many ways. And it was after I had made like a huge significant change. For me, and maybe the one that I'd like to share about is when I chose to leave my husband. And it wasn't just because I had met a woman that I had fallen in love with. We'd just been outgrowing each other. I was an actress on tour most of the time. So half of the time we had a telephone relationship. And back when the ARC was around, you didn't have WhatsApp. You didn't have all of that. When I was in China and he was in South Africa, he would have found like an international calling card and phone home once a week. So very, very different times to grow together. And so I was making a choice to leave someone who I loved deeply and still to today love. Someone, he was just a wonderful person. I read this book and she gets to this experience that she's having, but she talks about her husband is sleeping in their bed. And I was hiding in the bathroom for something like the 47th consecutive night, just as during all of those nights before, I was sobbing so hard, great lakes of tears and snot, spreading on the bathroom tiles ahead in front of her. She talks about her shame and her fear and confusion and grief. I don't want to be married anymore. I was trying not to know this, but the truth kept insisting itself to me. I don't want to be married anymore. I don't want to live in this big house. I don't want to have a baby, but I'm supposed to want all of those things. And I have lay on my bathroom floor or slipped out of the bed and sat on the side of the bed crying so that it didn't shake a few significant times. And this was one of those with my husband at the time. Finally choosing to try and do it as no matter how, when you make that choice with someone that you love and it's not like someone's having an affair or there's another big drama, and you love the person, you care for them, but your life is moving elsewhere. To separate yourself from them is such a traumatic thing. As you're saying, even if you're the one choosing to go, because it's not like you hate the person. So that was my experience. And it took us a long time to let the process go through. And at the time, I used to fear things like, because I still loved him so much, I'd be like, what if he died? And then I couldn't go to his funeral, because actually my choice meant I lost an entire community at the time. So I was very much the baddie. And it's that confusion of how do you be the baddie, but be the good person, as in still trying to do the best for you. It's a really, really tricky situation. Anyway, to wrap up my story, I broke my best friend's heart. He was my best friend. I loved him. And he didn't take it lightly. It destroyed him for many years. And as I went on over the years, and I've thought back, and I would be like, if I had to choose again, would I make the same decision? And a lot of the time, we do just say, yes, absolutely, because I like where my life is now, or whatever it might be. But there have been moments when I was like, I wish I could go back and undo that decision. Ultimately, no, that was part of my change and my growth. But that's the kind of confusion that you can carry with you for years and years and years and let it eat you up. And in fact, just 2 years ago, I got a call to say that he had passed away. And it was awful, because I still remembered that young boy, because we were kids, we were in our 20s, that young boy whose heart I destroyed, whose dreams I destroyed. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that change and choosing for yourself isn't always easy, but you have to really be very conscious when you're making these choices, because you ultimately are choosing, you're here for this lifetime for a certain amount of time, and you need to try and enjoy it fully. And sometimes that means letting go of people, things, homes, situations that you do care for. It's not just because you've outgrown them and, that they're crappy now.
I believe that we have guilt because it's connected to our worthiness. So, do we believe that we are worthy of having a great, big, sexy, beautiful life with different experiences? And we're not taught that. We're taught that this is the path that you will journey. And it's not to say that that path is not correct. It's just we're not given, at least when we were growing up, it's not like you're given like, here's the menu. You can choose whatever you want. And if you don't like it, you can reorder. The question that I want to ask you is, so you touched it a little bit. There have been times in your life where you've looked back and you go, would you have made the choice differently? My question is, would you have made the same choice, but would you have done it differently? Would you maybe have left earlier or had a different conversation at an earlier time when you noticed that you guys were already maybe like shifting in different directions? Because I think sometimes we can be quite black and white. Would I have made the choice? But maybe in terms of breaking his heart, do you think that had you not fallen in love with the woman, but rather had looked at the relationship and said, this is not working, or we're growing apart, or can we make different choices? Do you think that would have had a different impact? And is it something that's sitting here you've not thought about or have thought about and have a different viewpoint in terms of it? Fuck, that's like 800 questions. You know what the just question is?
I gotcha. So I say this to you often, I think that very often we do the best that we can with what we have available to us at the time. So I think, as a rule, I was doing the best that I could with this uncharted territory. And I have to have a little bit of compassion and allowance for myself now that I've had a bit of time to reflect.
And please don't think that the question is from a place of judgment. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's what hindsight gives us, right? How could I have handled this differently? Or could I have handled it differently? And sometimes it's fuck no.
Yeah. There are moments within that time that there were things that I did, actions that I took, that I'm like, God damn, that was insensitive. But it's a weird thing. We were talking about this after our Christmas holidays, when I had such an awareness of that, even just with my brother. And when he talks about things when we're growing up and how I have spoken about, you know, various topics, and he's been really sensitive to them, or I've hurt him or offended him. And I'm like, huh? How? I didn't even know that. And so I am aware that in every situation like this, when we are so focused on our own pain, our own discomfort, our own trying to move into the next situation, you can behave in ways that you hurt people that you don't know that you've done. And so all I can do on the other side of that is just really ask for forgiveness for that, for the things I've done that I know and that I don't know. That's all you can do. The main thing is that at some point in time, the person will forgive you, but it's when do you forgive yourself? Because I strongly believe that many years later, when I did get ill with cervical cancer, I felt like a lot of that was driven by my constant guilt about this situation. So there are things in that moment I would have changed, but I was doing the best that I could at the time with what I had available to me. And that's like an allowance we have to have for ourselves moving forward is I'm going to hurt people going forward, even with the best intentions that I have in life. As I choose for myself, and we generally choose selfishly. Well, actually, I think a lot of the time we need to choose more selfishly because sometimes people like you and I will not choose for ourselves and will absolutely choose for the other person. But as we choose for ourselves, there can be people that get hurt around us. And all we can do is be as conscious as possible, be quick to look inward and to not be afraid to say to someone, that was not the best version of me. I'm so sorry. And, is there anything I can do to help, to make this better?
And look, sis, there are times where we know that we are not acting as our best selves.
Yeah.
But sometimes in that moment of not acting as the best self, it's actually your truest self. Not that you're a bad person, but in that moment, you are choosing for your truth, for yourself. And that doesn't always align with the people around us. And so I think what's becoming a little bit more my belief is that it's not about good or bad, but it's about being true to yourself and honoring yourself and doing so in the most compassionate way and with more awareness.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always mean that we're operating at the highest level because we are humans. We have emotions, we have wounds, we have memory, we have patterns, etc. And it shouldn't be about erasing all of that. It should really just be about, okay, what is truthful to me in this moment? And I think that's where I go wrong, is that I know what is true to me. I have really strong intuition, but I will use my brain at every point to
Mhm.
question what I'm feeling and then to negotiate myself out of that. So, like anger is really good for me because it shuts down the inner critic who's going, no, you need to do this and think about that. It's like, no, there's one. When the masculine comes in, A to B, we get in the shortest possible time. But it's not about being better or operating from a higher position. It's more about being more truthful to self. And yes, that does mean that we're going to hurt people along the way. But I don't think that I don't operate from a place of meaning to hurt.
Yeah. And that's the thing, whether you consciously hurt people when you make decisions or not, it's cause and effect. One just has to know you can choose for yourself, but there's always cause and effect.
But on the other side as well, a person has a choice in terms of how they take your moment of selfishness. You can take it as a personal rejection, or you can go, okay, recencies and lifetime, this person is choosing for themselves.
Yeah.
And I, in response, need to choose for myself. And that could be a situation of, well, I don't actually like the way you've shown up in this, and therefore I don't see us journeying together anyway.
Yeah. And it's requires you to be really strong. Because when you, as you say, when we're angry and we're in a fighty space when we're making change or ending relationships, it's easy to move forward. But when you have a partner that's there, like in this particular example, and they are, for all intents and purposes, begging you just to stay. I mean, I remember Cor and I used to sit early in the morning, like outside the house on the patio, just next to each other and cry
Mhm.
because we knew that the time was there, but neither of us wanted that, but neither of us could stay in the situation either. I couldn't be his wife.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's very hard to choose, to continue to choose and be the baddie when someone is literally saying to you, you can be with that person, but just stay here and be my wife. And, you know, when they're so vulnerable and they are not able to choose for themselves because all they want is for you to stay in their world
Yeah.
or stay at the job you're in or keep doing the community work that you're doing because it's such a good thing and we can't do it without you. There's so very often these conversations and negotiations that can keep you locked in to choosing. It's not always, well, you're a dick, so get out of here.
It's a great quote that I saw recently, which is, if fate brought us here, why is it not keeping us here? What's your advice, or what would you say to a friend or a sister who is coming to you and saying, I just can't be in this relationship any longer, and blah, 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 blah? What are you saying to them?
Well, it's
What are
a,
you
it's
saying to me?
good question that you asked me because I think first and foremost, it goes back to again surrounding ourselves or creating a tribe around us who will call us on our bullshit and who will really care enough about our situation as though it's theirs. Because I think a lot of people jump ship from situations, from relationships particularly, because this person is irritating me and they're X, Y, and Z. It's all about them and I'm out. And then your friends are going, absolutely, yes, you get out of here. Actually, it could be your wound that is wanting you to change. And if you dealt with your wound, you may very well not want to leave that situation. So, first and foremost, don't just spread yourself thin and speak to yes people. Go to the person who will truly look inward with you and call you on it. You need to find someone to be vulnerable to. And then second to that, it's always really good to have a counselor, like, you know, someone who, aside from everyone else, can unpack exactly what's going on. For a lot of people, if you're in a relationship, two of you may want to go together to either consciously uncouple or at least to kind of hash things out or to be able to go to war with a neutral negotiator, whatever it might be. But I think when you don't know what to do, it's better to pause before you engage. Pause and think and then move. I mean, look, that's again like dependent on the situation. If you are stuck in an abusive situation and you have an opportunity to jump ship and run, and your people around you are saying run and everyone's saying run, then God damn it, run, would you? You know what I mean? So I think this is not a one size fits all approach to all change. I'm only speaking from a healthy situation.
You know, you've always got to take it to the dark side.
Well, you
Always got
know,
to take it to the dark side. I mean, we're speaking about healthy, you're bringing in the negative.
but yes, so that
And
would be my first piece of advice. Just surround yourself with people who will help you to make choices because you very often can't do that when you're blinded with emotion. Or if you are already in love with someone else and you're wanting to leave a relationship, is that you can very often be blindsided just by this attractive thing that's there.
I like what you said about being aware of what is driving the discomfort, because our partners are our mirrors, and sometimes they are there to bring up stuff for us to work through. And as you've said about therapy, sometimes going to war is actually fighting your shadow and your wounds, not to only stay in the relationship, but to stay in a space that's actually beneficial for you. And often we think, okay, fighting means fighting the other person to get away from them. No, sometimes It's your shadow stuff that needs to be dealt with so that you don't repeat this over and over again.
Yeah.
I feel that if you fall in love with someone else, that's normally an indication that you were looking for it out. Because I don't know how, if you're still in love with the person in a relationship, I don't know how you fall in love with someone outside. And
Mm.
again, there's no judgment in terms of this. For me, I wouldn't be able to be in love with two people.
That is a debate. Can you love more than one person at the same time? Many would say that yes, you can. You're
Not
loving
me.
differently.
I'm just
Exactly.
saying I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to, but it's not to say that there's judgments. I think that would be a really big indication to me that something's not working in the relationship
Yeah.
if I found myself.
But what's a
And,
good point?
it's just because I'm like, my capacity to love is so limited.
No, it's so big for in one situation that you can't spread yourself thin.
Exactly. It's very concentrated.
But it's a good point because I don't think you can love two people exactly the same. Well, I mean, or at least that's not been my experience. I'm either lusting after one and just loving the other like they're a family member. So
Yeah.
you can love two people,
Yeah.
but that's often when you get into tricky territory because that kind of lustful, and I don't say the word lust like it's a bad thing. Lust is a beautiful word. I mean, if we all operated in our day with lust for life, oh my
We
God, can you
love
imagine
that.
what we create? Exactly. But that is not a sustainable reason to jump ship, especially when you've got other things there. Sometimes it's just a catalyst to help you leave that situation. Again, there's so many scenarios. Find your tribe, find yourself a facilitator or a therapist or whatever you choose to use to guide you through big, big life choices. It's not weakness. It's it's really wise to do because no matter what you're going through, someone else in the world has gone through it already. We always feel like our situation or our change or our need for something else is unique. It ain't. There's been millions before.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we don't have the capacity to see ourselves from the outside.
Yeah.
Can we shift a little bit? We've gone from relationships because we love relationships. What about friendships?
Mm.
What happens when you outgrow friendships?
You know, that can be a really tricky one because do you both feel the same? Like if you both feel like, yeah, then, do you just spend less and less time together and they can softly move in a different direction?
But we also know that there's times where one of you feels that way and the other one is like desperately clawing you back and you're saying,
This is,
okay, yes, let's do coffee.
have you got an example of that? Because I feel like this is an area that you've had some experience in.
So this is the one area where I'm quite black and white. It's when you are in my
Right.
heart that
One area you're black and white, did you say?
I'm a lot. Um, Look, I mean, for me to call you a friend, it means that you have entered my heart. I have many acquaintances. I have very few friends. That's, some people are like friends with everyone. I'm not like that. Um, but there was a time in my life where I was hanging out with people that I would have to drink just to hang out with them. I had so much anxiety around judgment, and I wasn't very conscious about it at the time, but I would literally have to have a drink before seeing them.
Hmm.
And I eventually got to a stage where my father had died, and I was going through quite a intense mourning period, which my father wasn't part of my life. So for a lot of people, they didn't understand or weren't even aware that I was going through a really intense space. And it was less about him, but that was the catalyst that allowed me to
Process.
process. Thank you, sis. Process just some stuff. And so I pulled away from them for about 6 months. And then we had gone to a dinner. And I was sitting at that dinner and I just thought to myself, these are not my people. We don't have the same conversations. I'm not interested in speaking about people and that kind of stuff. And I had to walk away from those friendships. And I said earlier on, I like to normally have a closing engagement, but it wasn't like that. I just simply walked away and decided to move on with my life and not engage with them again. Some of them I have since, and those are the ones that they're the reason I was in that friendship group was because of my friendship with two people. And we've rekindled our friendship again, which I'm happy about. But just in terms of not feeling great being around them and then having the courage or having an opportunity to identify that that wasn't the right group of people for me. So, I mean, you don't have to be drinking to be feeling that way, but it's when you feel drained or you just don't feel like this is the right space, it's making those choices. And there's nothing wrong with them. They just were not my people energetically.
Yeah.
And so now I kind of look at it as a case of, as Taylor Swift said, treat your energy as a luxury item. And it's okay. It's okay to say, I'm interested in different things and I want to invest my energy in the stuff that multiplies my energy, not drains my energy.
Yeah, I love that. Because in that, you're not making anyone wrong. You're not making them wrong for how they be. You're not making you wrong for choosing differently for you. You're just saying, I want to invest more energy into, or you choosing to invest more energy into
Yeah.
your future self.
And that's where I'm at now, where I don't see it as right or wrong. I mean, there are instances where we want to blame the other person. But if you take like, at least for me, when I take a more sensible approach, I will often say, it's not that they're right or wrong, it's just this is the experience. And it's when we can stop seeing people as right or wrong that we can really lean into that reason, 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 lesson, life,
Well, reason,
lifestyle,
reason, reason, vliegen, vliegen,
reason,
vliegen.
reason,
Vliegen,
reason.
vliegen, vliegen, vliegen. And today's episode will be
But
spoken
it's,
in vegan.
but yeah, I've said this to you as well. I'm like exhausted of speaking about healing and working on myself. It's really just about how do I get back to my truth, the truth of who I am, warts and all. Let's enjoy that. So if I'm a fiery individual, let me be a fiery individual. Let's not try and contain that. So I think it's really about figuring out what brings you closer to you. So your tribe can be massive or it could be small. For me, it's always going to be small because I am like whiskey. I am not everyone's cup of tea. And that's okay. And I don't want to be everyone's cup of tea. I'm a luxury item. So I
Oh,
think that's what bought me.
you are. I agree. You know what? I think outgrowing someone isn't a failure. It's really an indication that you are not standing still. You are not stagnant. And stagnant water, we know, eventually becomes smelly and unpalatable. So it really is a sign of movement and flow.
I feel quite negative about using the word outgrowing
Yeah.
because and maybe it comes down to value. It makes me feel like there's a superiority
Yeah.
position. And so for me, it's just maybe it's not outgrowing. Maybe it's a case of growing in a different direction,
Yeah. And like,
moving in a different space.
yeah, changing it up.
Hey, I'm just different than I was yesterday.
Yeah. Making new choices.
Yeah.
I'd love
Yeah.
to hear from those of you who are listening to this episode. Either of any examples of how you handle change or handle change with friendships or relationships. But do you only make change when it's come to the point where you can no longer, or are you able to make change consciously, little bit by little bit? Do you need the full drama, or can you choose daily for yourself?
My view is that we only change when the discomfort of staying the same outweighs the discomfort of changing.
Yeah.
And I love this quote, which was, a woman who truly loves herself knows that what is for her will keep up or catch up.
I love that.
Hashtag life goals.
Yeah, absolutely. What is that thing that, I mean, the old one was, if you love something, let
Set
it
it
go.
free.
It comes back to you, it's yours. But I don't like the part where it says, if it doesn't, it never was, because that's so dramatic. Something can be yours for a season.
Anything else that you want to share in terms of this topic? It's a big topic, right?
It is, but I
Yeah.
think I think I will be very surprised if anyone listening to this conversation isn't either in a space of, oh, how can I change up some things? And it doesn't have to be massive relationship. It can be, as you were saying, jobs. It could be where I live. It could be the kind of exercise you do. You know, maybe you've got a personal trainer who you've been seeing every single day for the last 10 years of your life, but actually now you want to start doing aerial yoga. And so you're going to have to leave something behind to choose something new. You know, so it can be that we're always in a constant state of change. And it's to not feel guilty about that. But if we rather can tap into the excitement of what it is we desire, again, when we create something, if we can create from what would I really like here? What would bring me joy? What can make my life feel, what can give me lust for living? Then shedding the old skin that we have, or letting things go to make space for something else, becomes a lot easier. And I reckon if we embrace change from that space, that registers in the people around us, in their reptilian brains. They can sense that that's where we're coming from, as opposed to, you are wrong and therefore I want to be away from you, from judgment.
But I like what you said there, because sometimes it's really difficult to actually even break up with your hairdresser or your personal trainer. You know, you have to leave the gym that you used to go to, because you can't say to your personal trainer, thanks very much, but I think we've come to the end of our journey. Even
Yeah.
with life coaches, you know, they normally give you like, book for 10 sessions. And then how do you at the end of the 10 session go, yeah, this is not really working for me? I mean, I have done that twice. And then my third life coach was, you know, it was a 2-year relationship. But just the ability to go, thanks very much, we've completed the reason, can be quite challenging in all aspects of our lives. So, of course, when it's the bigger ones, like friendships that have been great, and then, you know, they just outgrown themselves because of circumstances or life or choices, partnerships, you know, especially when there's marriage involved and you've stood in front of everyone and said, till death do us part.
Business
And
partners. Oh my gosh, that's another whole
works,
complication. Yeah.
you know, even podcast
Yeah,
hosts can sometimes struggle.
absolutely. You know, we have to check in and see if we both still desire to continue on. Um,
Exactly.
you know, that's part of
Because,
life.
yeah, so I think you and I are both on a journey in being better at choosing what's right for us and communicating that to those around us in a compassionate way.
Yes. And you know what's been my experience is that if you're choosing from a space of creation and desire and more, and as we're saying, that yummy lust for life, very often the thing that we perceive to be a problem that's holding us back will automatically disappear. Like life has a way, you know, as we're saying, fate brought us here. You know, allow that same wave to take you elsewhere and deal with changing the environment around you. Because if you have someone at work, and I've had this experience, someone that you may be working with that really causes you to have a situation that doesn't bring you joy. If you focus on the problem and that person is the problem, that what we focus on, it just expands and it becomes louder and louder. if you start focusing on what you'd rather desire, a peaceful space to go to work in, where you feel appreciated and that's where you can thrive. Oh, it's happened to me a number of times where that person has suddenly left the company or they just suddenly disappear. We don't have to control everything in such a crazy way.
Closing comments.
Yes.
Mine is, when nothing changes, nothing changes. So when one thing changes, everything changes.
Ooh, mic drop.
What's your parting words of wisdom?
What comes to mind is to be kind to yourself and to those around you in change, because anything that triggers us is triggering someone else's stuff. To really try to expand our allowance for ourselves and for those around us. And again, a reminder that life is not what happens to us, but it's how we respond to what happens to us. Those are the three things that come to mind right now.
Wow, you're a deep girl.
I wanted to say something, but this is not an X-rated.
To change, choose it wisely, and to a big, sexy, yummy life.
Yes. Salute.
Thank you for listening. If you have comments, suggestions, or feedback, please email us on notuspod@gmail.com. Remember to follow us on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and watch us on YouTube. Until next week.
Wow.